Red Bull Racing holds a commanding lead in both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, but AlphaTauri is unable to score a good amount of points. The Italian squad has mostly chosen their own way in previous years, but Red Bull opted early this year to escalate meddling within AlphaTauri once again, even prompting them to copy Red Bull's design to try and be more competitive on the grid. Helmut Marko has previously stated that AlphaTauri may take over components from Red Bull, and tales from the paddock are currently circulating about a virtually perfect replica of Red Bull's success car. Could we see AlphaTauri completely copying Red Bull's design next year? And will they be able to take over some of the more successful parts without consequences? Sky Sports analyst David Croft believes AlphaTauri will be in the starting lineup next year with a replica of Red Bull's RB19. As there are constant speculations in the Formula One paddock, according to the Brit, and he personally loves the idea. Croft revealed what he believes he knows about the rumor in a Sky Sports podcast. Croft comments, "There are lots of reports that the plan is under whatever name they're going to be, maybe Toro Rosso once again, that they run this year's Red Bull next year." The British driver references Japan's Super Aguri squad, which participated in the previous year's Honda car in 2006 and 2007. He also mentioned Haas and Ferrari's relationship, as well as the 2020 Racing Point car. The car in question was widely regarded as a near-identical replica of the Mercedes of the previous year, resulting in much controversy. As a result, there should be a response to the idea Croft is spreading. AlphaTauri will not be able to completely replicate the design, but will be able to replicate some elements. The FIA intervened after Racing Point surfaced with a clone of the Mercedes W10 and set out a so-called listed team components list. This list outlines precisely what teams are not permitted to duplicate from one another. The components on the list are those whose design, production, or intellectual property is solely held by one competitor. Time will tell whether AlphaTauri will lawfully release an RB19 replica next year. So, is there any truth to these rumors? One thing that is true for certain is that AlphaTauri has been very poor this year, and this caused the future of AlphaTauri to be scrutinized earlier this year, culminating in changes for 2023 that would influence its identity and relocate sections of the team to Red Bull's Milton Keynes campus. But despite a directive, Helmut Marko mentioned to use more Red Bull supplied parts. The team will not just run a Red Bull clone next year. Since the former Minardi team was sold prior to the 2006 season and relaunched as Toro Rosso, it has relied on Red Bull components to varying degrees. It could run whole Red Bull designs for its first 4 seasons before customer car restrictions made that impossible in 2010. Since then, it's been authorized to adopt some pieces from Red Bull, as specified by the ever-changing list of what are now referred to as listed team components that must be created by the teams itself. This list includes the monocoque, aerodynamic components, front impact structure, plank, fuel tank sensors, wheel drums, heat exchangers, fuel bladder, and several other sensors. All of these parts need to be designed and created by the team itself. All the other components can be brought from sister team or other competitors. As part of a restructuring agreed upon by AlphaTauri's energy drink owner earlier this year, the team has been urged to strengthen relations with Red Bull in order to boost its competitive fortunes under a new name. This shift in position will result in more aero workers being headquartered in the UK at a new facility that is in the works, as well as taking more customer components from sister team Red Bull for its 2024 Challenger. The greater coordination with Red Bull led speculation earlier this year that the team may essentially run a clone of the RB19 customer vehicle, but their aim to use Red Bull parts has been commonly read as suggesting employing considerably more such components on the 2024 car, which would be derived from the current Red Bull since year-old parts are often made available as part of a process known as synergy. However, technical director Jody Eggington has stated that while there will be an increase in the number of Red Bull parts utilized next year compared to this year, there will not be a significant difference. Since we started Synergy in 2019, the parts we've selected off the menu have been different, and for next year will be slightly different again, said Eggington. Relative to this year, it's a bit more. Relative to a couple of the previous years, probably about the same. But at the end of the day, there's a notional value consideration for customer teams. When you start purchasing parts from supplying teams, you've got to keep an eye on the budget. We'll maximize what's available to us as we try to do as much as we can. Because of the cost cap, the issue concerning notional value is important. The cost ceiling is set relatively high to discourage teams from manipulating the system by selling components cheaply, and to reflect the reality that teams buying parts do not have to spend resources in the facilities and employees to develop and build them. The agreement among teams is that it is therefore preferable to be selective, since else you would be more constrained by the expense cap than competitors. As a result, AlphaTauri's performance may suffer if it relied on Red Bull for all approved parts. The AlphaTauri AT04 borrows the Red Bull's rear end, including the gearbox and rear suspension, with the exception of the aero shrouds which the team must build, as well as the hydraulics and Honda power unit. What is more important to AlphaTauri is that it keeps control over the decision-making process. Eggington insists that this is still the case. I've read on occasions how it is communicated through the press, but the bottom line is there are 3 sets of regulations: sporting, technical, and financial. Red Bull headquarters are saying maximize what you can do. It has become a bit more public lately for various reasons, and we're encouraged to look at everything and explore every area. But there'll be some things that we can't take. It has become a bit more of a thing. We're less competitive, so people are saying, "You're not quick enough. What are you doing?" In 2020 and 2021, the car was competitive. It wasn't really talked about. We took some Red Bull bits, so be it. So yeah, we're being encouraged. But it's not really a case of control. It's good to know that the guys in headquarters have got our backs and are encouraging both teams to really maximize what they can do under the regulations. AlphaTauri's obvious answer would be to advocate for more up-to-date components to be provided. While Haas's pricey Ferrari technical connection allows it to use current year components, AlphaTauri only has parity with Red Bull when rule changes need it. That suggests the 2022 car used the Red Bull rear end from that year. Anything that broadens AlphaTauri's options should help it to make better decisions in terms of car specifications. It would be sensible to tell a team to go beyond what is achievable in order to strive for more. "This stuff's always in discussion," said Eggington, when asked if he's pushing for up-to-date parts being available. "I wouldn't want to say exactly what we're doing yet, but it is a thing. We've been year -1, but in 2022 we had the same parts because it was first year of the regulations. We've been year -2 in previous times because we wanted to be year -2. The 2021 car was year -2 on some bits, but we're comfortable with that and it worked well for us. So we're always pushing Red Bull to support us in the best way possible, and where that's appropriate and where it can be achieved, we'll take it." With F1's rules prohibiting the exchange of aerodynamic parts and design data, AlphaTauri will have to develop its own car, even if it, like other teams, is expected to get closer to the Red Bull idea. However, Eggington stated that no decision has been made on whether the Red Bull parts AlphaTauri used in 2024 would be year-old or current, but he is certain that the squad is already far advanced on its new chassis. At the end of the day, our aerodynamic concept, although we haven't got the highest performing car on the grid, it's not standout different to anybody else, he said. "We know which way we want to go. And also, there's some optimism and other things, but primarily we're aero-driven. So the chassis will be substantially different, but in terms of concept change, we know which way we're going. We're reasonably aligned with what direction other teams are going as well. We've just got to be more successful in achieving those objectives." It is well positioned to capitalize on this by having control over what it accepts from Red Bull, rather than being obligated to absorb everything for philosophical reasons. Furthermore, given the necessity of mechanical platform control in making the aero operate properly, this puts the team in an interesting position for 2024, assuming the current performance advances are accurate. But we'll have to wait a couple more races to be sure that AlphaTauri's mid-season updates have been good for a wide range of the current tracks. What are your thoughts on the idea? Will AlphaTauri copy everything they can? They've already copied the Red Bull-like side pods this year, so why not take some other parts next year that are created to fit in that philosophy? It would surely be the easiest way to gain performance and try and get back to the midfield again. But the big question will be if the team and its engineers will be able to swallow their own pride and take over some parts instead of creating them in-house. This idea must give a bit of a failure feeling to some of the engineers within the team, so we'll have to wait until next year to see with what name and what design AlphaTauri will start the 2024 season.